welcome back to the Self Starter Podcast. My name is Nicole Lord, and I'm here with Halle from Take Your Shot. And I'm so excited to have her here on the podcast. We just recorded for her podcast, and it was a super fun conversation. So I'm excited to continue the conversation over here on my podcast. Halle, welcome to the show, and will you introduce yourself to the audience?
Oh my goodness, Nicole. Thank you so much for having me. It was so fun to have you on my podcast. And so, man, just so much gold in one day. So yes, hi, I'm Hallie. My friends call me Hal because most people will otherwise call me Haley, and that is not my name. So, hey there, Hal here. And yes, so I am a full-time wedding photographer and business coach. However, that was not my original plan. What's wild is I went to college for communication and journalism and ended up working a 9 to 5 for a Fortune 500 company where it was honestly on paper a really cool job, right? Like people probably would have loved to have that job. I was managing 5 different teams. It was a really high paying job at the time. But honestly, I was just trading my mental health for a paycheck. And at the end of the day, I think that was like really hard for me because I felt this like tension of I'm in this really like desirable job. I'm getting paid really well, but like I just am not enjoying life. Like there's something's got to change. So essentially, I ended up leaving that job, went back and got my MBA in business. Thought I was going to do something climbing the corporate ladder, the classic American dream. And long story short, essentially, I had worked an entire year for a promotion, and my boss was planning on hiring me. It was like this whole thing, all set in stone. And at the very last minute, I ended up not getting the job. And I remember feeling this kind of like almost relief that I didn't get the job, but also confusion. Like, I don't know if you've ever had those moments where you kind of had this plan for your life and it was a good plan. It maybe wasn't like what you wanted, but it was like a safe and good plan, right? Like you kind of go for that. And when I didn't get that job, promotion, I remember going and, like, asking some of my friends at church to pray for me. My faith is really important to me, and while I'm a photographer and business coach and, like, I am a Christian as well, and that definitely plays a role in this, but, in this time, like, I definitely had to ask friends for prayer, and one of them texted me, and she basically sent this voice memo, and she was like, "Hallie, as I was praying for you, I got this vision, and I got this picture of you playing soccer. You had the ball and you were going towards the goal and you stop and you look for someone to pass the ball to because it seemed like maybe you're just kind of used to doing that, but nobody was there. And then God yelled at you in a thundery voice to take the shot. And I know it's kind of wild and it's like a very specific thing, but what this friend had no idea about me was I had actually played soccer for 10 years and I was a midfielder and I was always afraid to shoot on goal. Like literally after every single game, I would get lectures from my dad saying, "You need to stop passing it to your friends. You need to shoot. You were right there. The goal was wide open. You had your shot. You can't keep doing this." And at the end of the day, I was just afraid. I was just afraid of failing. I was afraid of disappointing people. I was afraid of just like this pressure and not being able to live up to the expectation or hope. And as something as simple as just taking the shot, like obviously you're gonna miss the ones you don't take, right? Right? Wayne Gretzky. But for me, I just put so much pressure on myself and I never wanted to fail. And I always would just take the safe route. And so I'd let someone else have it, right? Like I'm the perfect girl to get you the assist. I don't need the credit. I'd rather have someone else take the pressure off me. And so basically my friend gave me this vision and I knew it was from the Lord because it was so specific. She had no idea about that. And I like went to my husband, I was crying and I was like, God is literally telling me to go full time with photography. Because throughout this whole time, I guess I forgot to mention it, but like I'd actually had a side hustle photography business. I've always been a creative. I've always loved creating, but never thought it could be my full-time job. So that's why I got the degree. That's why I went and got my MBA. That's why I continued to just like go after all these things I felt like I should be doing. But at the end of the day, I was coming up not fulfilled. And creativity and like picking up my camera, there's just something about that that just makes me feel alive and I absolutely love it. And just never thought it could be for me. And so people would always ask me, "Would you ever go full time with photography? Would this ever be something you wanted to do?" And I'd always tell them like, "No, no, no. I don't think I could take the pressure. I don't want to like what if I don't love it anymore?" Like any excuse, right, to not do it. But at the end of the day, I was just too afraid. And so when I didn't get this job promotion, and even though I still had a job there and everything, I just knew I was supposed to like put in my notice and go full time with photography. I had not that many weddings lined up, but not enough to go full time. But what's crazy is when I left that job, and I went full time and I went all in with the business, not only did I make a sustainable income, but I actually made double what I was in that actual job. And I
Mhm.
think it's so cool and just a testimony to like who God is and just like when he calls you to something and you like take that step, even if it's uncomfortable, like he definitely honors that. And that's not to say like it's always going to be easy. It was not. In fact, like within literally like a couple months of being full time, I was like, I need to quit this. Like it was
Mhm.
mentally really hard for me.
Yeah.
But like looking back and just like how much I had to push through and like was confronted with and had to work through that maybe I wasn't necessarily doing before, it was so worth it. And I can honestly say picking up a camera has completely changed my life.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much. And I feel like we're very similar in our stories and like our journeys to getting to full-time business ownership. We talked a lot about this more on your podcast episode, so I'll link that below in the show notes for the audience to listen to that. But I feel like I echo so much of what you're saying, especially when it comes to like when I quit my full-time job, my 9 to 5, I didn't have like it wasn't like I mean I had money saved up and it wasn't like a crazy jump, but it definitely wasn't like something that I could just totally go to at the time. It wasn't like I had planned it to the T, when I quit. And I remember it was definitely a God moment. But like 4 months later, I remember I hit that mark. Like I had matched my attorney's salary, like almost to the cent, like 4 months after I quit. And I was like, this is such a God thing. Like I didn't have this on the books. Like this wasn't like the plan. I didn't go into this year thinking I was going to quit my job. And then halfway through, I ended up doing that. And so it really is cool when you see like God's hand in like those little small like ways. I always say they're like God's fingerprints. Like it's like these little things that he's like affirming like, hey, this is the right thing, or like I'm blessing you in this way, or this is a cool way I want to show up for you. So I love that. I love that you said that. That's really cool. Yeah. Well, tell me more about, okay, so you're a photographer. Well, you're a photographer and videographer, is that right?
Yeah, so,
Okay.
I thought I would be a photographer and videographer,
Yeah.
and when I went full time, we added videography, but
Okay.
then I learned pretty quickly that's not something you just do. So my husband actually runs the video side now,
Okay.
and
Okay.
I just manage photo. Yeah.
Okay, nice. I love it. And your Instagram account, so I just started creeping on you like while we were, on the other interview. And your Instagram account is you have a pretty large following, which is amazing. I love it. So tell me more about like how maybe like how you've grown that and your experience with the photography side of your business.
Yeah, so social media, it's like a love-hate thing, right?
Yeah,
And I don't know, it's like a whole topic, right? Like,
yeah.
I've definitely found success in social media to some capacity, but I will say this, like, mentally, it's been really hard for me over the years of just, like, spending so much time on the app, but I would say contributing to, like, the growth of it, the biggest thing that I would say has helped me is just consistently being who I am.
Mhm.
When you look at our account, when you look at the things that we post, you're probably not gonna see a lot of the same things on other pages, and
Yeah.
I think that's because what I like to do is I like to, first of all, not take myself too seriously,
Mhm.
and second of all, I just like to have fun with it, honestly. Like,
Yeah.
my husband and I, we kinda have this unique and fun dynamic. Our account, it's Luli Photo and Film, so Luli comes from Luke and Halle. Everybody says it wrong. They say it lol or lul or whatever, but it's just our couple name.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, it's just we just have fun with it, like, whether it's, at a wedding, we'll get a lot of behind the scenes, obviously, that's a big part of what we do, and, like, whether it's, like, Luke trying to flip the veil, like, he's a sprinter, and he'll just go so fast, and so it's, like, funny
Yeah.
to get that, or, one thing we do is, it's kind of a unique perk to working with your partner, but and he's also a pretty strong guy and he likes to show off that. But I'll like get on his shoulders and take photos like of unique angles, right? Like I'll be up on
Yeah.
his shoulders and getting kind of this unique angle of the bridal party, or when they like throw the groom up in the air with the
Yeah.
groomsmen, like I'll get up on the same level and like get a photo from that angle because
Love
that's
it.
something that's kind of unique. And so I feel like what we do with social media is we kind of have this mindset of, first of all, having fun with it. Second
Mhm.
of all, just being who we are. And
Yeah.
third, just like giving people a glimpse into like what would it be like to work with us, like whether that's, providing different resources, showing them the work, or just being fun behind the scenes. Like I
Mhm.
think people just love the human side of it. And so over the years, that's definitely like taken off. And I think when we are leaning into just like showcasing who we are, how we work together, and just the fun we like to have, I think that's definitely played a role in like our growth over the years.
I love that. I love that so much. I feel like Instagram can be such a drain on a lot of people. So the fact that you're saying you're having fun with it, you're enjoying it, like it's whatever you make it. I think that's so refreshing because there's so much out there that's like you have to post a certain number of days and at this certain time, and then it just becomes like a drag. And like a lot of people that I hear, especially in like my coaching one-on-one, it's like I've neglected my social media. I should be doing more. It's very much like a it's just a drag. It's like it's just draining. So the fact that you're having fun with it, I definitely think people see that and they like that and it's refreshing, I'm sure. So yeah, I love that. I think that's a big thing too, is like with strategies in growing like on social media or like YouTube or whatever it might be, it's like finding what feels good for you and like what is sustainable for you. So for instance, like I started a YouTube channel and that's been like a cool area and like an outlet, and it's more long form content that lives a lot longer than Instagram. And so I kind of refound like my passion and my fun with like marketing through YouTube. So I feel like it's kind of a similar story to your Instagram journey of having fun and just like showcasing who you are and showing off who you are. So yeah, I love that. So something I want to touch on a little bit is you have a lot of like destination type experience, I think, with like weddings and things like that. So I get asked a lot, and I really don't have too much destination experience. I've definitely shot like in different places like Maine. I've been to Montana, Wyoming, and I've been to, definitely local like Charleston, like things like that. But I wouldn't say that I'm like a destination photographer, if that makes sense, but I would love to shoot more, like, especially internationally. And I know you don't maybe do too much of that, but I would love to know more about your destination experience and kind of how you got into that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think as we were evaluating our brand, like Luke and I each year like to kind of sit through and look at the weddings that we're booking, the type of people we're booking. And at the end of the day, like we kind of had this realization as we were booking couples and weddings and getting more experience under our belts is that we just really love the type of couples who are just really down to earth and they're all about that experience, right? Like they're not necessarily about like having the most expensive wedding and showing off to their guests, or they're not necessarily like super stressed about all the little details having to be this perfect thing. Like we really target like the laid back people. And with that, we found that a lot of people like to do kind of like those intimate like Airbnb weddings. Before the pandemic was even a thing, we had shot several Airbnb weddings, whether it was like local or actually, yeah, most of them were like kind of local here. And we weren't necessarily targeting that, but people were like hiring us. And I think they were kind of realizing that we were this like kind of down to earth couple too.
Mhm.
And like you're going to attract what you put out. And so if you're like kind of a more down to earth, you're traveling a lot and doing a lot of that kind of in your day to day, then
Mhm.
people are going to like kind of see into that. And that's going to be a part of like who they believe you to be, because you get to share that part of your life with them.
Mhm.
Um, Let me rephrase that. What
Okay.
you're sharing online is gonna, like, really resonate with people in a way that, like, I don't know, gives them a glimpse into, like, who you are, right? And
Yeah.
so, like, me and Luke love traveling, and, okay, you're gonna think this is kinda crazy, but, so last year, about 30% of our weddings were, travel related, and we like to keep it in the US.
Yeah.
We do travel internationally, but that's not something I have really loved the idea of doing a ton of with weddings. Never say never. I'm actually considering doing something, like, in the next, like, year or
Mhm.
2 with that, but there's just a lot of logistics with, like, permits and visas and things like that, and so it's, like, a whole different thing. So,
Yeah.
we've just kinda decided to, like, start small, and we just love traveling, and what's wild, though, is even though we travel so much, you wouldn't believe this, but I get so much travel anxiety, like, literally, when I have to go on a plane, you wouldn't believe how much anxiety I have. Like, I I
I know.
literally have,
Yeah.
like, literally the worst. And it's funny because we still do so much traveling, even though I have, like, really bad travel anxiety, which I will share with our followers,
Mhm.
we still get, like, a lot of destination
Yeah.
work, like, here in the US, and so, I would say, like, when we first realized we wanted to do more destination work, we kinda realized, like, well, we don't really have the portfolio to do that, so we
Yeah.
started asking ourselves, like, "How do we start stepping into this and making it easy?" And so, we kind of looked at the connections we had, the places we wanted to go, and started planning our own trips. And then as we started planning those trips, we would see like if we already had connections in those areas, we'd start offering shoots. So
Mhm.
we actually had a couple, and this actually lined up perfectly where we shot their wedding and then COVID happened. So they ended up having to, well, COVID happened and then they had their wedding. They were going to do two different ones. So they had their intimate COVID wedding and then their big, reception that they were going to do at a later date. And then, long story short, they ended up canceling that second one.
Mhm.
And so and he was from Colorado, and I was like, well, perfect. We could maybe do a thing where we can actually like do kind of like this intimate like adventure with them
Yeah.
in their wedding attire. So because they never got to wear that again, right? And it could also showcase a place from like them that's really meaningful for them and did that. So we actually ended up doing an adventure session is kind of how we branded it. And we started offering that to our couples where, if you guys get married and you want to have like another excuse to like get dressed up but have an adventure in it, we've been like
Yeah.
we started offering something like that. So then it's not like, oh, I need to hire models or buy a dress or do all this to get that content. It was
Yeah.
using like the connections that we already had and
Mhm.
offering another experience, another reason for someone to hire you, right?
Yeah.
So that was
I
kind
love
of like
that.
where we started. And
Yeah.
then and then over time too, like, I mean, I do think going to workshops and styled shoots and things like that can be really valuable. That's something I actually didn't really do much of early on, but within the last couple of years, we've attended a couple workshops, and I will say they are really valuable. We actually just hosted our first one in Joshua Tree this year, and it
Love
is
it.
so fun to just be in a room with other people in a really beautiful spot,
Yeah.
knowing that the content's going to be amazing and not having to plan it all yourself, right? Like,
Mhm.
there's something really nice about that, and so we started kind of going and whether it was like the traveling we had planned on our own, like when we were going to Colorado, or we've also done road trips down south where we've actually like lived on the road and like planned out our own content shoots along
Mhm.
the way and just
Love
also
it.
enjoy the vacation.
Yeah.
um, but then we also would then start getting these contents in these types of places. And then when people would reach out about actually booking their wedding,
Mhm.
um, part of the booking process is like showcasing work that we've actually done that could kind of be similar to their wedding and vibe. So
Yeah.
we would send out custom proposals. So when we'd actually get people inquiring for places like Colorado or Arizona or, something with like within the Red Rocks, like Moab, we actually had content to show for it. And so
Yeah.
when people would reach out, we would not only be able to say like, oh my gosh, I love these areas, or this is a great place to do a first look or X, Y, and Z, and like providing some sort of expertise in those areas. We
Mhm.
were then able to, in the custom proposal, showcase our actual work so then they could actually envision themselves in front of our
Yeah.
cameras within that same kind of like landscape, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
I
Yeah,
love that. Yeah, that's so important. I feel like when I was starting out with wedding photography, just in general, not necessarily destination, but just trying to get to wedding photography from the senior photography I was doing, that was the way I did it. I built my portfolio through style shoots and second shooting and being able to show potential clients, like, hey, this is what I have like that I've done before. So yeah, so when I was first starting out, I feel like portfolio was just a big thing because I didn't have portfolio. And then when people would inquire, they would be like, kind of nervous to hire me because I didn't really have anything to show for it. So I think it's a great thing that you have that portfolio, you created that for yourself, and then you're able to market that to potential clients. So my question for you is when you were doing like those content shoots, like it sounds really fun, like the living on the road, I guess, kind of things. But like I guess content shoots anywhere, how would you structure it? Is it like you would reach out to people that you know and offer the shoots for free, or like how would you structure it? Because I'm curious, I think my audience would love to know how they could do that potentially for themselves and what it would look like in terms of setting it up.
totally. And I would say like my best piece of advice for doing content shoots is like start small and do it within good capacity.
Yeah.
Like I think sometimes people have this idea of, oh my gosh, I need to go hire a planner. I need to book a venue. I
Yeah.
need to rent a dress. I need to like do all of these things. And I think that can be great. However, you want to make it easy on yourself, especially if you're traveling,
Yeah.
because like there's a lot of logistics that go into that. So I mean, you can partner with a planner and ask if they can help you like host a styled shoot. That's a route I know some people do. My approach is a lot more simple. So if I actually like have friends in that area or they have connections, I'll just say like, "Hey, I'm going to be doing mini sessions at this park." For example,
Yeah.
when I just went down, so my husband and I we live on the road in the winter for like a
Mhm.
couple of months just because
Yeah.
we like to escape Minnesota.
Yeah. I love it.
um yeah, so it's been really fun. So we always will usually drive down, we'll go to like Arizona, make our way to like Southern California, just kind of do the loop and be with our dog, and it is seriously so fun.
Yeah.
But, like, on that road trip, so, like, for example, a couple months ago when we were down there, we were in Colorado Springs. I've got family there, but I
Mhm.
realized I don't have actually much content from Colorado Springs, and so
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful place. If you've ever been to Garden of the Gods, it's amazing. You gotta go.
Love to.
And so I had this thought of, okay, this is something I want to add to my list. And so I basically like put out a model call and just was like, hey, I'm gonna be at this park at this time, and looking for two different couples who are interested. And so I just basically booked two different couples, and like I set the schedule, I set the time,
Yeah,
and then you can like do that. And so I don't usually post about this stuff on Instagram because that's
yeah,
like my audience, but I will like, I told my cousin, like, hey, if you know anyone, do you want to like see if these times work for them? And he would just
yeah.
like reach out. Or another thing I've done in the past, and I did this last year when I was in Arizona, was I actually just like reached out to other photographers who I knew had like a wardrobe.
Mhm.
And it basically was like, hey, like, would you want to do some sort of swap? Like, we model for you, you model for us, and then we can both kind of like walk away with some content in this really beautiful park. And
Yeah,
people are usually down for that, especially if you've got people who like have a wardrobe. And as you start hosting styled shoots, and we do workshops now, and I think I now own like 6 wedding dresses, which is kind of wild. um, so now you kind of have like more of the capacity to do it over
yeah,
time, but
yeah.
just kind of thinking through, what type of content do I want? How can I make that easy on myself? Who can I partner with to do
Mhm.
that? Or who might be interested? So like
Yeah,
it doesn't always have to be wedding. I think a lot of times people think it has to be like this whole wedding production, but like you can still get a really solid portfolio and just taking photos of like the landscapes itself. And then when you
yeah,
send those custom proposals to people, you can have that landscape in the heading and they already see like, oh, I see what their editing style is going to look like with that color rock or
yeah,
that type of
yeah,
landscape,
yeah,
or even couples who you think are like local to the area and they have cute style or taste, like reach out to them and just say like, hey, would you guys want some free photos in exchange for your time? Like, I'm just
yeah,
hoping to build my portfolio in this area. Like, you're never above that. And I think too, like even though I've been doing this for now 8 years, it's definitely like you're never above like doing your own type of content
yeah,
shoots, right?
yeah,
Like I think it's so important to have those creative outlets. And especially if you're traveling somewhere anyway, like trying to figure out how can I expand my portfolio? How can I use this? You can also business expense it, which is great.
yeah, yeah.
At least like parts
Awesome.
of it. And so, yeah, it's just kind of like a win-win. And again, just keeping it simple and looking at like how much capacity do you really have for this and like to what scale do you want and just starting small and building from there.
Yeah, I love that. I like especially what you said about not posting a model call to like your whole Instagram following, but making it really strategic and saying like, okay, how can I leverage my connections in this area? And then getting those people to either model for you or asking people in the area because I think especially when you're first starting out, you're like, I don't know where to start. I don't know how to get people. And so you tend to like put out mass things on social media and it's not necessarily going to get you people that are aligned with what you want or like actually be strategic for you. And so I like that you're like, okay, it needs to be strategic. It needs to be, something that you're setting up for yourself at your time and you're designing the whole thing. So yeah, I love that. I love that so much. So tell me more about, I want to get into the workshop thing because that's cool. And I've hosted style shoots before and I love that. And that's one part of my business as well. But before we get to that, I want to know, how do you maximize, like let's say you have done content shoots, right? And then afterward, how do you maximize it so that you are starting to get those inquiries from those places? Because it sounds like you do actually get inquiries from certain destinations and you're in Minnesota. So like obviously Red Rocks is not near you, right? So how do you feel like you're getting those inquiries from couples? Are you blogging a lot or like what's your process for like after the shoot to promote it and get those inquiries?
That's a really good question. First of all, make sure that the content I'm getting is going to be used not only for like my photos, but also
Mhm.
reels. So a big part of the content thing I should also express is like making sure you're getting behind the scenes
Yeah,
and like whether that's setting up a tripod and having like a little tripod film you while you're actually doing this shoot in this
yeah,
beautiful park, like that's key. Or you also can get these mounts that you can actually mount it like onto the hot shoe of your camera if you're not using flash.
yes,
And basically where your flash would go, you can put your phone and just record videos. So I will say first and foremost, make sure you have some sort of way to get behind the scenes of you actually working in that area.
hmm,
That kind of helps build that trust with those, potential clients who are going to come across your page, seeing like, okay, they've been there or they've been to a place that's similar and it's actually them doing the work. I think
yeah,
that's really important key for building trust and like reliability. And then second of all, I kind of like have basically, I look at a couple different things. So I'll make sure that I obviously edit the photos and I'll post them on Instagram, right?
hmm,
Anytime I do that, I look for tags and I know like hashtags are kind of going out, but
hmm,
I'll like usually tag like Rocky Mountain Bride if it's in the Rocky Mountains, or,
yeah,
I'll look for different things like that that are relevant to
mhm,
tag them in. And then I'll also make sure to include I'll make sure I include the location in the post. And
Mhm.
then from an SEO standpoint, I don't know if you know this, but you can add alt text to your photos
Yeah,
now in
yeah.
Instagram. And
Mhm,
so
yeah,
making sure to describe each of the photos in a way that not only shows what's in it, but like where it is and that
mm,
it's a professional photographer, like making sure you have your keywords. So if like, let's say you want to book weddings in Colorado, like having the words Colorado wedding and photography in there. So you could
mhm,
say a bride and groom on their wedding day in Colorado posing for their wedding portraits, or you know what
mhm.
I mean? Like you can kind of
Yeah,
figure out ways to do that to have your keywords in there. And so just kind of making sure that you're still serving the purpose for alt text, which is explaining it to
mhm.
someone who can't see the actual
Yes,
photo,
right.
but using it in a strategic way. So I'll
Mhm,
usually do that. I'll also make sure to post a reel. And so the reel will usually like be behind the scenes, as well as like sometimes I'll incorporate like the actual edited final images. I don't actually always include the edited images. And part of that is I want them leaving wanting more. Like if they
yeah,
see that I'm like with a camera and they're in this beautiful place and they see a cute pose, I want them to actually want to go to my page and like scroll to find that.
mhm,
Or
yeah,
sometimes people will comment and be like, we want to see the results. Or
yeah,
sometimes they'll say like, hey, wait for the results, or I'm going to post this tomorrow, or something like that. So I don't actually always post that, but you want to give them something more. And then, yes, I do a lot of blogging. A big thing to do is just kind of like think through, yeah, what do you want someone to like search in Google to like actually find you? So if it's like Colorado elopement photography, like have that as a keyword, and you can maybe write guides on how to elope in Colorado or different locations and things like that, just like serve that purpose.
yeah,
So those are kind of the three main things. And then another thing I'll do on my Instagram is like when I'm really starting to like push a specific location, or I really want to do more of that, I'll just make sure to like add it to like the highlights thing
mhm,
with my stories, so that then when people will come across my page, they'll see one for Arizona, Colorado, they'll see one for California. And as they can go through that, they can also see all the places that you've like kind of shot within those different
yeah.
states.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love that. All of that was so good. It was like a 5 minute like gold mine. That was amazing.
A
Yeah,
little
I
crash
love
course.
that. Well,
Yeah.
that's just like such great knowledge, and like it really is helpful to like just think about all the different ways that you can put this out there. Because I feel like some people get stuck and they're like, oh, well, I just make an Instagram post about it. And you're like, no, you can do a highlight, you can do a reel, you can do behind the scenes, like tease them and don't show them the final product. Like there's so many different ways you can kind of put it out there. So I love that. Do you feel like most of the people are finding you through the Instagram? Is that kind of like the main way they're finding you for the destination stuff?
I will say I have done a lot with SEO over the last
Mhm.
couple years.
Yeah.
I actually did like a trip with a travel blogger, which is like a
Yeah.
whole different thing. But
Yeah.
like from learning from travel bloggers how to like essentially utilize SEO in your
Yeah.
business, I've kind of learned a lot about that over the
Okay.
last couple years
Okay.
too. And so I do have like I do like have a blogging strategy, but I would say for destination work, a lot of it does come from
Yeah.
Instagram.
Okay.
Currently our inquiries are about 40% Instagram, and then
Mhm.
30%, from Google, and then the other 20%, or whatever
Okay.
the math is coming
Cool.
from referrals, and then yeah,
Yeah.
other yeah.
I love that. Okay, cool. Well, I have one more question for you. I wanted to know more about the destinations you've been to and like the workshop thing, because I think that's so interesting and intriguing, especially the Joshua Tree one. So tell us a little bit about some of your favorite destinations you've been to and some about the workshops that you've done.
Yeah. Um, could I actually add one more thing too?
Yeah, sure.
Um, Like, so if you're wanting to get into destination work, you
Mhm.
also need to make sure that you're setting up your website for that, you're showcasing that on that, and then
Yeah,
also like your collections. So, for example, one of my favorite things that we've done in the last like year and a half is we actually started like in our consultations when they first inquire, we get them to dream big about their engagement session. So we
yeah,
actually talk about it as a double date, given that we're like the husband and wife photo video team. We talk about the importance of telling your story, and then we talk about the importance of like making sure that this represents you, and we're up for anything. Like that's literally something that we talk about. And so we actually have it as an option to do their engagement session anywhere in the United States. Like it's kind of a luxury. It's definitely comes at a premium price, but we've now been offering that, and we've had several people take us up on it, and it has taken us to places that we would never have normally gone for an engagement session. Like for example, we've gone to New York City, and we've gone to the Pacific Northwest. Like these couples who are choosing these locations, it's either meaningful for them because they grew up there, or maybe they started their relationship there, or they've always just wanted to travel there. Like people are choosing locations that are somewhat meaningful to them, or they're just looking for an excuse because maybe their parents are giving them X amount for their wedding experience,
yeah,
and they're
yeah,
like trying to utilize that. You never know,
yeah.
right? But it's just really fun to like make it fun and get people to dream big. And so by you actually showing them as like this is an option, they might
Mhm.
actually think like, man, okay, that's cool. Like I'm doing this boring wedding in the Midwest, but I would love to go to the mountains, right? And like let's incorporate that in some way, shape, or form because that might actually feel more like them. So I think it's really important to, as you're structuring your business, thinking through like if you want to do more travel, maybe you just need to give people this like idea of how they can do that themselves and like start planting that in their ears and then making that an experience around that alone. If it doesn't have to be always the wedding is the destination.
Yeah,
Um,
love that.
yeah. And so, yeah, a couple of my favorite places that I've shot would definitely be I absolutely love California. That is something like I would live there in a heartbeat if I could. I just have too much family here. It's a Midwest thing. You just never leave.
Yeah, yeah.
um, I've loved shooting in Colorado. I love the mountains there. One of the craziest places I've gone, I didn't shoot a wedding here. I was supposed to potentially shoot a proposal here, but I've actually gone to Kyrgyzstan.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't for a wedding, it was for like a travel blogging summit that I was invited to, but essentially I got to travel there and be a part of this whole like travel blogging summit in exchange for like documenting it. And so we got to go to this country. It's in the middle of the it's in like Southeast Asia. It's beautiful. 100, it's like 95% mountains.
Wow.
So literally like one of the most beautiful places and underrated places ever. Have absolutely love traveling there. I would shoot a wedding in Kyrgyzstan in a heartbeat, if I
Love
could.
that.
Um,
That's amazing. I
yeah.
love that. That's so awesome. Well, thank you so much. I'm so impressed by you. Thank you so much for being on the podcast, and for sharing about this topic. I feel like destination weddings can feel like out of reach, but it seems very doable based on what you've told us. So thank you so, so much for coming. If if my audience wants to connect with you further, where can they find you?
Yeah, so you can find me at Take Your Shot Collective is my business coaching for wedding photographers and videographers, and then I also have at Luli Photo and Film is our Instagram, so I'm sure those will get linked here. And then
Yes.
we do also host workshops, and so I've currently got a wait list for our next one. It has not launched yet, but we've got a few ideas of like locations and stuff. And as we're debriefing our previous workshop, we're still trying to figure out like where and when we want to do that. But they are really fun, and there's nothing like just getting in a room with people who are like minded and really understand like what it's like to run a business, but then also who are really eager to just like get amazing content, but also just like learn alongside one another. So it is so fun just like hosting that kind of space. So if you're interested in that, can definitely get you on the wait list and you can learn more when that comes out. But yeah, it's super fun.
Yes. I love all that. And we'll link all of that in the show notes below so that everyone can follow along and maybe go to one of your shoots in the future. That'd be awesome. But thank you so much for being on the podcast again. And thank you, audience, for listening. And we'll see you next time on the Self Starter Podcast.